Oh, we got a star-studded lineup. Quit playing. All right. Uchenwa, Team
Oh,
Genus, bring first.
that's right.
Okay. So, I am Minister of Information, Lion Blyden, and I greet you all in the words of peace. Shalom, assalamu alaikum, hotep, alafia, and as always, race first.
Race
So,
first.
we want to welcome you all to our Adwa Day celebration and observance. And before we get into the actual program, you know we must begin in orderly fashion with the Queen LV. Please sing our national anthem.
Blessings, blessings to everyone. Ethiopia, the land of our fathers, the land where the gods love to be. As storm clouds at night suddenly gather, our armies come rushing to thee. We must in the fight be victorious, our swords are thrust onward to gleam. For us will the victory be glorious when led by the red, black, and green. Advance, advance to victory, let Africa be free. Advance to beat the foe, advance to beat the foe with the might of the red, the black, and the green, with the might of the red, the black, and green.
Ashe. Excellent. I always love when she sings it. Queen LV, thank you so much, sister. Round of applause all the way around. And so I wanted to make sure I put the words up on the screen as she was singing it because we are going to come back to this. Clearly, Adwa Day is a celebration of the sovereignty of Ethiopia. And you notice Declaration number 40, Ethiopia, land of our fathers, shall be the national anthem of the Pan-African race of ours. So we will be dealing with this moving forward. So, Queen LV, lovely as usual, race first. Um, So a quick shout out to a couple of our sponsors. We are sponsored in part by Elevate. Elevate our minds, elevate our thoughts, elevate our voices, elevate our conversation. Join Elevate. And we are also sponsored by Adornments by L. Enhance your Empress energy. Check out the lovely beads by Adornments by L on Instagram. Also, sponsored in part by our host today, Stress Less Every Day with Dr. Kelly and Sister Paulette. Protection for your family, your business, and your personal identity. So let us get into our program today. First and foremost, we wanted to have a reading real quick from one of our historical members, Percival Burroughs. Now, you know, we just had our 6-year anniversary. We just renamed our division the Montgomery Burroughs Division. One of the reason we added Burroughs was because of this gentleman here, the first Assistant Secretary General, the Honorable Percival L. Burroughs. Okay, so we will have a reading from our Lady President, Sister Sophia Blythe.
Race first, everyone. Percival L. Burroughs, born in 1879, born in Barbados and immigrated to the United States in 1904. Described by the Negro world as a self-made man. In the Negro World was printed in 1923 in November. Burroughs rose quickly through the UNIA ranks after he became a member of the Buffalo Division 79, and on December 16, 1920, he established a small newspaper called The Voice of Buffalo as the organ for Division 79, possibly to counter the anti-Garvey material that was being published in the Buffalo American, which was the city's leading news black paper at the time. The Buffalo UNIA sent Burroughs as one of its delegates to 1921 UNI convention, and he caught the notice of Garvey and the national leadership. Burroughs became High Commissioner for the islands of Trinidad and Tobago, St. Vincent and Grenada, and as well as for Brazil and Venezuela. Under his leadership, the UNIA established 21 new divisions in the region. Garvey promoted Burroughs to the first assistant secretary general of the UNIA parent body to replace Thomas W. Anderson in 1923. Here you can see on the screen are two Black Star Line shares, and they were both signed by Percival Burroughs. That's what he did. He made sure he didn't only talk the talk, he walked the talk. Um, and also, when we talked to his daughter, Leota Henry, a few years ago, she told me about a quote that he often said. And he's always said, out of the dry blue, Ethiopia will rise again. And every time that we drive by where he used to live, I would always say those words as a respect being paid to an ancestor that we want to walk in his shoes. So, yes, Ethiopia will rise again.
Race first.
Race first.
All right now. Okay. Moving along, I believe our next piece is a musical selection. So give me 1 second. Dr. Kelly, you got the song queued up. That's the first.
I'm not queued up, but I'm not sure which one is next.
It's okay. I'm not
I
sure.
apologize.
It's okay. No worries. We're celebrating here. Here, just right here.
All right, got it for you.
So, just to piggyback off what the lady president was just talking about, Brother Percival Burroughs, took on the mantle of First Assistant Secretary General, and under that, he was able to open over 20 new divisions, meaning bringing people into the understanding of Black nationalism, Black government, and our own self-reliance. Things that we talk about during Kwanzaa, but they were actually building these things. The Negro Voice was the newspaper that Garvey created. Here in Buffalo, Percival Burroughs created the first Garveyite newspaper after the Negro Voice, called The Voice of Buffalo. And so we honor him in his media strike to get the word out into the world, to make sure that the world understood what Garvey is, Black nationalism was. DJ Doc, we ready?
We are.
So Brother Percival Burroughs said, Ethiopia shall rise again. I always thought that this song right here was very fitting for that. So please sit back and enjoy.
You're broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can find the fire, the seed in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, walk it out and move mountains. I rise like the day, I rise up, I rise unafraid, I rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. You can have all the money in your hands, all the possessions anyone can ever have, but it's all worthless treasure. True worth is only measured not by what you got, but what you got in your heart. But you can have everything. But what does it mean? It all means nothing. You don't stand up for something. 'Cause you can't just talk the talk. You got to walk that walk. Yes, you do. It all means nothing if you don't stand up for something. And I'll stand up for you, self-respect, dignity. If that's all you got, then you gotta earn it. And without that, you don't have a thing. No.
Rise up, love, lift your hands.
I stand with you 'cause I understand
Ain't here to judge, just to take a stand.
the greater plans the creators
Plan. Let's all rise like the day began.
reach out and touch with the Savior's hand.
On rock we stand like his native land. Let the ways of love be the ways of man.
If you don't stand for something, 'cause you can't just talk the talk. You got to walk the walk. Yes, you do. If you don't stand up for something, and I stand up for you.
Your hands up. Come on, you.
I stand up for you, and I stand up for you. I stand up for you. All right.
Let's go. Talking about rise up and stand up, having the babies preach the word. Come on. So one thing I like about that song is it gets straight to the point. It gets the babies singing, get them energetic, talking about, you know what I'm saying, standing up for something. Because you got to do that. Just like Lady President said, you can't just talk the talk. You literally got to walk the walk, especially when we're talking about doing liberation work. So we're going to move on in the presentation here. Try and get through this. I'm going to run through a presentation, a brief history of actual Adwa Day. We're going to have our Stress Less Every Day folks come on and speak about legal defense, protection, and security. Then we're going to have our illustrious keynote speaker, Brother Genius, come on and speak. And then I will close out with a bit of a different type of history. So let us continue. Did y'all like that song? No, you can jump in if you want. What do y'all think about that song?
Andre Day is like everything. It's a beautiful song, of course.
Yes, and the babies brought tears to my eyes for sure.
Right? Listen, I was over here, when I first heard it, I'll be here crying like quit playing. That song is beautiful. And then they had the baby singing it. Quit playing. Okay, so the reason we're all here, folks, is Adwa Day. And you know what I'm saying? We are Garveyites. And clearly I told you before we were going to go back to the song, National Anthem. National Anthem, again, Declaration number 40, Ethiopia, land of our fathers, shall be the national anthem for this race of ours worldwide. That's why you see a push for Ethiopia being a focal point, even the capital of the Pan-African world. I'm going to give you a brief history and an insight as to why that is, and to why we're here today. So in 1896, there was a day yes, Yes, to answer the question that was just asked. Um, the Battle of Adwa was a day of African victory. Okay, you see here these beautiful tapestries on excuse me, artistic expression of that day. Okay, the battle that goes down in history as the day that the African nation stood against a modern European colonialist army, stood firm, stood up for something, and maintained their sovereignty, their black nationality. Let's go. Race first. So, the scramble for Africa. Between 1881 and 1914, the European powers were trying to take over Africa. And they've done so pretty well, which is crazy. Okay. Except for, you see, by 1914, only Ethiopia and Liberia really remained independent out of all of what you see as countries today, on the continent. Okay. So the push was for Abyssinia or Ethiopia. So Crispi from the premier from Italy tried to trick Menelik II by falsifying documents. So what they did, they had a treaty. If you see here at the bottom, let me zoom in a little bit. You see here at the bottom, the Italian Eritrea here to the left, that little green sliver, that actually was controlled by Italy. Okay, and this was, of course, Ethiopia. They had the treaty, but the Italian version of the treaty said that Ethiopia would then be a protectorate of Italy. But the but the Amharic version did not say that. The Amharic version just said Ethiopia would be sovereign. So basically, they were tricking them with falsifying documents, and that was the basis of the Ethio-Italian War, specifically the Battle of Adwa. King Menelik II was the king of the province of Shoa and commanded a force of 100,000 men. He led a brilliant campaign that forced the overextended Italians to fight on his terms. Okay, he left their supply lines exposed, vulnerable to a population that was now turning against its occupiers. So everywhere that Italians were in the lands, they were getting forced out. And here's a famous quote. Menelik II ordered all the Ethiopian nobility to call out their banners and raise their feudal hosts, saying, "An enemy has come across the sea. He has broken through our frontiers in order to destroy our fatherland and our faith. I allow him to seize my possessions, and I entered upon lengthy negotiations with him in hopes of attaining justice without bloodshed. But the enemy refuses to listen. He undermines our territories and our people like a mole. Enough. With the help of God, I will defend the inheritance of my forefathers and drive back the invader by force of arms. Let every man who has sufficient strength accompany me, and he who has not, let him pray for us." And here you see a basic rundown of the forces that they had. 25,000 rifles. When they say rifles, they're talking about men with rifles. 3,000 horses. Again, men riding horses. 32 guns. When you see guns, they're talking about cannons. Okay, and that's just what Menelik II. Empress Tetu had 9,000. Negus Hymenot had 8,000. Ras Makinen had 15,000. Okay, so they had somewhere between 70,000 and over 120,000 men at this battle, which outnumbered the Italian army 5 to 6 times. Here is to the right, you see an Italian map, which was outdated. This was the map that the Italian battalions were following, which was a little bit outdated. And so they had to, they were actually going the wrong way, got caught up in the hills, etc., terrain warfare, guerrilla warfare. The Ethiopians knew their land. The Italians were trying to use outdated maps and got caught up. And so they ran into the over 100,000 Ethiopian forces. Empress Tetu, she was the third wife of Emperor Menelik II, and she is the one credited to founding Ethiopia's capital city, Addis Ababa. You see down here at the bottom, the all-female specialists, right? They were specialists in the art of combat and espionage. They were able to move about because people didn't suspect the women at the time, not realizing, you see them there, well-trained in combat. Here you see Negus Hymenot. Now you see Negus is king. Okay, remember when you see the word Negus, you're talking about king. Ras means prince. Okay, a member of the Solomonic dynasty, the same thing you see with Haile Selassie, right? And he was nobility of the Ethiopian Empire because of it. Salute to the brother Bata Hagos, who pushed forward and proclaimed himself an avenger of the rights trampled on by the Italians. He pushed forward. He ended up losing the battle and dying in the fight, but he was a warrior for the people and key to the victory. Ras Mikal of Wolo, another key to the victory. He was able to make his brigade corner an entire section of the Italian army, drove them down into a narrow valley, and was able to slaughter them, shouting, "Reap, reap." And the remains of that brigade's commander were never found. Here you see a quote from Augustus Wilde speaking about Ras Alula. Okay, the Abyssinians never expected to be attacked, and the Italian advance would have been a success had it not been for Ras Alula, who never believed the Italian officials and would never trust them. Two of his spies observed the Italians leave Antischio and arrive by a circuitous route, and informed Ras Alula, who was one mile of the north, Adi Abuna, that the enemy was on the march toward Adwa. The Ras immediately informed King Menelik and other leaders. Abyssinians prepared for battle and were able to defend Antischio. Ras Makinen, you may recognize that name because he was the father of Haile Selassie, or Tafari Makinen, later known as Emperor Haile Selassie. The reason that's another connection to Garveyism is because, again, Garvey said, look to the east. When a black king is crowned, our liberation will be at hand. Now, when he was saying that, obviously, we've just been speaking about black kings, but the word Negus, remember I spoke on that, Negus, Negast means king of kings, lord of lords. So that was the title that Haile Selassie was able to claim when he came into power in 1930, 10 years after Garvey said, look to the east. 1948 and later 1955, he grants 500 hectares of land in the Shashamane land grant to the black peoples of the world who desired to come home. So I made sure I spoke on those folks because I always call this situation the real Wakanda, the real life Black Panther story. Emperor Menelik organized the kingdoms of Ethiopia to defend themselves against alien occupation. Here you see one of the members of the Black Eagles Aeronautical Bureau, the UNIA's Air Force, Colonel Hubert Julian, the Black Eagle of Harlem, in the second Ethio-Italian War. After we won that last one that we just talked about, 1935, he went to Ethiopia to aid in defense of Selassie's government and was put in the command of the Imperial Ethiopian Air Force. And here on the bottom, you see, not only did he go, you see Black Americans in mass were signing up to go back to fight in Ethiopia against colonization. And there in the middle, again, you see the women on the front line signing up to go do that work. So that right there is our presentation on Adwa Day and the history of why we are even honoring this day outside of the fact that we must have, like Garvey said, we must cast aside a hero worship of other races and honor our own heroes. This is one of the situations that we must talk about and honor. So that's why we're here today, just to keep that in our minds and keep that on our mindset. So before we move on to our next presenter, did anybody have any quick questions? No? All right. Well, happy Adwa Day. And moving forward to our next presenter, our Stress Less Everyday host, one of our major sponsors and our host today, Dr. Kelly Clark and Sister Paulette Hall.
Thank you. Thank you. Race First family.
Race first.
Miss Hall is a little muted out here in the background. I apologize for that. But we are going to share our screen because we want to have an opportunity to talk to you about defense, protection, and security, which is what we learn from the story of taking care of the homeland, right? And so when we think about taking care of the homeland, that actually can also include our own personal, homes, right? So it can be nations, it can be continents, as in all of Africa. It can actually also just be our home, our apartment, our families. And so we're going to talk about legal defense, protection, and security. My name is Dr. Kelly Clark, and I'm just about to retire. I'm so excited to be able, I'm calling it refirement, not retirement. And I'm so excited to be able to actually present this to you today. But let me just tell you, my career has been completely in issues related to social justice. And I'm going to share with you one of the things that I do to protect, defend, and secure my own home. All of my children are protected, defensed, and defended and secure in the same way that I'm going to share with you today, because I wouldn't share with you something that I wouldn't do and believe in strongly for myself. And I'll get into a little bit of my presentation and talk a little bit more about that as I get going. I'm going to start by talking to all my sisters in the room. Mama bears, what we do to protect our little cubs. There are ways that mama bears defend, protect, and secure our homelands, right? Our doors and our children. And we do it, I think, in three main ways, in addition to lots of other ways. But these three main ways that I want to talk to you about today: at school, in our community, and also in our home. And if you just bear with me for 30 seconds, because I forgot to pull up my notes. So I want to go in and do that so I know what I'm talking to you about. Ooh, this went back. This went too far. What happened? Yeah, it decided to go without me. All right. So bear with me 1 second. I just want to pull up my notes. I apologize. Here we go. Here's that one. And then this one. All right. So if we think about what our children do for the majority of their lives, they are in school. And they spend 6 hours a day there. Sometimes they get there early, and sometimes they stay late because we are working and we have to provide for them. And so they may be in after school programs and spending longer than 6 hours at school. But we know that our kids are constantly under threat of having their free speech being taken away from them at school. Did you know that the schools cannot force your children to wear certain things in the dress code, right? That the school literally has to prove that wearing a particular type of outfit, wearing their hair in a particular way, which we've seen, students accosted for, wearing particular emblems on their t-shirts. The school has to actually prove that disrupts the educational process. They have a right to school dress code. They have a right to speak openly about their beliefs in school. We know that sometimes our students may face issues of immigration. The schools must, by law, provide equal access to education for all of our children, regardless of immigrant status in this country, right? And I think about all of the brothers and sisters that I see in my communities who are from Somalia, right? And who are from actually Eritrea, right? And some of the same corner of the world that was invaded by the Italians that we were just talking about for Adwa Day. And so they can't say no to educating them. We know that our students with disabilities must be educated and given the same equal access to the education that is offered through the school, and school districts must provide that. How many people do you know? I certainly know people who've had bogus IEPs and 504 plans for their children that never did anything for them, right? And we know that sometimes our children find themselves with a pregnancy situation at school, and the school by law must continue to provide education to our young women. They must treat them as if they were there to learn, and they have no business talking to them about anything else, right? And so not about their choices, not about shaming them. All of that is off limits for schools. But how many of us know families who have been through it at school with their children, right? These are some of the things that we need to be vigilant about. Out in the community, we know that sometimes our kids get into trouble, and sometimes our kids are just accused, right? We know that we're followed by security in the mall when we go. We know that sometimes the mall won't even let our children in because they don't want them there. Our kids may be accused of shoplifting. Our kids may be accused of trespassing. Our kids may be accused of ruining a neighbor's property. Our kids sometimes do get into fights. We have to, understand and own that. We know that sometimes our children are involved in a sports injury. Somebody does something on the field that might be even egregious or even extra bold and threatening, right? So not just even a normal sports injury, but maybe they get into a fight on the sports field, right? So we have to protect our children from that. We know that there are drugs and alcohol that just run rampant through our communities. Our children are out there using these cell phones in ways that we know are wrong, but they're getting caught up in things that they don't even understand the total consequences. Sexting, just sending, these images to each other will land our students in, our children in lots of trouble and being labeled as sex offenders for the rest of their lives. So can you imagine being 13 or 14, not really understanding what you're doing and then being labeled for a sex offender forever? That's crazy. And then of course, our young people start driving, and what happens? Speeding tickets. I remember one day I was walking home and I saw 6 cop cars up on somebody's lawn about a block away. And I'm wondering what the heck is going on. So I get closer and they've got this young man sitting there. Why did it take 6 cop cars for one young man? He was driving his father's car. Is that crazy, right? So even when they're paying attention, even when they're in our own cars, even when they're obeying the law, they're still being accosted and accused of things that they haven't done. And then if we think about at home, and I'm going to go there because I'm a mama bear. And so sometimes we have to protect our children from the people within our own house, right? Sometimes we have to protect our children from the people in our own family. Sometimes we have folks who just call Child Protective Services in order to be messing with our families, right? In order to needle us, in order to get back at us, in order to be vindictive. And so what do we do when these things happen? This is why it is really important for us to, again, pay attention to how we legally defend, how we legally support these things that happen with our communities. Let's think about our rights, because I'm going to tell you a little bit here. I told you I'd tell you a little bit more about myself. I'm a social justice warrior because my mother was one, and the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. You see my brother, Lion Blyden, is not, again, we didn't fall too far from that tree, right? My mother was a social justice warrior because her mother was a social justice warrior, right? Her mother marched back in the day with Martin Luther King, right? My mother didn't necessarily march with the Panthers, but that was her time to say, you know, hey, what is going on in our communities? Today, so many of us are still marching with Black Lives Matter. I'm telling you, I personally am tired of marching for our rights. I know that there's a place in our communities for letting out that anger and frustration and trying to move systems forward by having large protests of people to show, you know, how we feel about this. But I'm so tired of marching because you know what? I shouldn't have to ask you just to respect me. And my marching doesn't necessarily, I've seen it backfire, and our marching doesn't necessarily attain the things that we want. What I want right now, because I'm tired of marching, is real solutions and real power. And that's what I found in what I'm going to present to you next, which is information about the way in which I protect my family. So let's think about this. Abner Louima, 1997, was tortured by cops in New York City. Trayvon Martin, decades later, right? We could name some people from last week, right? We see what happened right in Rochester with the police officers who were just acquitted, or not acquitted, but they weren't even charged, right? It just continues to happen. The app that I use to bring real power and protection to my family was developed in part due to the Abner Louima story. Because what I have on my phone gives me 24-hour access to an attorney who can work to make sure that my rights are being protected. And when the founder of our company heard about this case, he said, all right, that's enough. I'm going to put this in people's hands so that if a cop stops you, you can hit the emergency button and have a lawyer in moments to talk with the officer, to attempt to help in that situation, to protect your rights, because he truly felt that if Mr. Louima had had access to instant attorney services, that those police officers would have believed that he had access, that somebody was watching out for him, that he had power, and that they would not have done what they did to him. So I'm going to switch gears here, and I'm going to share with you a little bit of information about what it is that we do. So this is the vision of our company, which is called Legal Shield, is to build a better world where access to justice and security, which is what we're talking about today, is equal for every human, regardless of gender, race, orientation, education, social status, or personal wealth. And what we know today, family, is that if you don't have money, you don't have access. And our company was founded on taking money out of the equation. This is our headquarters in Ada, Oklahoma. This is a little bit about our company. It's called Legal Shield. We were established in 1972, which makes us just about 50 years old, 49 years old, okay? So we've been doing this for quite a long time. We have law firms, highest quality law firms all across the country and in Canada, which is important because we have brothers and sisters up there too, right? Yeah. So what is it that we do? This is the app that I was talking about. I have this app on my phone. My partner has it on the phone. My children have it on their phones. We're going to be protected. It allows us to call the law firm to get unlimited number of issues, free legal advice. They tell us, do we go right? Do we go left? What do we do next? Listen to the story that we learned about the Adwa victory, right? Adwa victory. They were trying to pull a fast one, right, on our brothers and sisters of the day. You need people who can understand what it is that's going on, who can tell you, how to interpret those things and what to do. Our attorneys can write letters and make phone calls on your behalf. If someone like a landlord decides not to give you back your security deposit, and you have instant access to an attorney who can say, hey, wait a minute, my client has access. You can't hold that. You're doing it because you think that they have no power, but guess what? They do have power. We have contracts and documents reviewed. This is what the brother in the story of Adwa needed, right? They gave him a bogus contract. The English version or the Italian version had the real language in it, while his language didn't have it in there. Yeah, this is what happens with contracts and documents, right? The bold print giveth and the small print taketh away. And we don't know what we're looking at when somebody gives a contract to us. You get up to 15 pages reviewed. We have IRS audit assistance. Guess what? All of us are participating in the gig economy. Some of us are driving, some of us are delivering, some of us are doing things from home and selling things on the side and baking from home. And the IRS cannot wait to get their hands on us because they think we don't know what we're doing, right? It is proven that the number of rich people who are audited has gone down over the last 20 years. The number of poor people who are trying to make ends meet has gone up. They're trying to make their money off of us. So if you have IRS audit situation, you have access to an attorney. We have civil trial defense and domestic services that we can support you with. Somebody decides that they're going to sue you because they think they can, or because they're being pissy. If somebody falls down your stairs, or you're watching somebody's child and they come home with a bump or a bruise and they want to sue you, you now have an attorney at $50 an hour and not $300 an hour that can support you. We have traffic ticket assistance. So going to get a traffic ticket, have an opportunity to have an attorney go to court on your behalf, which I love because you don't have to take off a half a day of work to go sit in a ticket court, right? Who has time for that? That could be an entire day's pay for someone. And then here is the single reason why I actually decided to start selling this is because of the emergency legal access button. This is the button that we put in specifically because of Mr. Abner Luima's story. 24-hour, 7-day-a-week emergency services. I've had friends who've used this when they are pulled over by the police. They push the button. I had one friend who the attorney got on the phone and said, well, what's going on? And my friend said, I don't know why this cop is stopping me. The attorney said, well, let me talk to them. The attorney literally spoke to the police officer and changed the entire situation around. The police officer was really nice and friendly and told him why he was being stopped after that call. We've had folks released on their release to a verbal bond to their attorneys over the phone on the side of the highway who otherwise would have been arrested and taken to jail. So this is the number one reason why I have this on all my children's phones, because it's not just the men who are being stopped by the police, women are being harassed by the police as well. You know what? Protecting your family with a will, a living will, a healthcare power of attorney, and a financial power of attorney, that's protection, right? If you are a parent, do you realize that if something happens to you, if you pass away, your children are going to foster care until the court can determine which of your relatives is best fit to take care of them? If you don't have a will, because your will is the thing that tells the court who you want your child to live with if something should happen to you. Now, I'm talking specifically to the single parents in the room, because you are your entire world to your child. If something happens to you, you don't want your child to spend 1 hour in foster care, right? This service gives you your will, your living will, your healthcare power of attorney, and your financial power of attorney at no additional cost. There is absolutely no reason why you shouldn't have these things in place. And we have a 25% members only discount for bigger matters. So let's say you've got a contested divorce, somebody pulls a DUI or another criminal charge, you need to have an attorney. And what are we doing? We're going to Google and we're Googling it. We're going to Facebook and we're asking Facebook, do you have a recommendation for an attorney? Well, you know what? Google and Facebook didn't go to law school. Don't ask them. You want to call your 800 number and have an attorney at a 25% discount for those things. So who's covered? The member is covered, the member's spouse, domestic partner. If you're living in the same household, you don't even have to be married. Never married dependent children under the age of 26, as long as they're living at home, which is huge. Dependent children under the age of 18, for whom the member is a legal guardian. So many of us are raising nieces, nephews, grandchildren because of family circumstances. They tend to have more legal issues. Make sure that you're first a legal guardian by using the service, and then second, make sure that all of their issues are protected. And then any mentally or physically disabled children, as long as they're living at home with you for the entire life of that child. I have a cousin who is raising her autistic son well into adulthood, right? Many of our disabled and physically and mentally disabled family members or children are still living with us well into adulthood, and they need protection as well. How much does it cost? Remember I told you we took the financial out of the equation. It costs as much as a pizza and wings. You have shoes that cost more than $24.95. I know, because I have shoes that cost more than $24.95, right? You buy 2 packs of Pampers and that's $24.95, right? And so to have all of this to protect ourselves with real power and real protection is why I'm so passionate about this service. I'm going to give you Sister Paulette's phone number if you are all interested, particularly getting your will done for $24.95 a month at a top law firm. How can we do that? Because we have over 4 million members across the country. So everybody pays a little bit, and so we can all get access to a lot. Please call Sister Paulette Hall at 585-413-6467. If you're ready to sign up just because you heard this, you don't have any questions for her, go straight to stresslesseveryday.com and you can get yourself and your family protected. Give us a call and let us know that you've registered, and we will make sure to help you get your will done before the end of the month. I just want to thank Brother Lyon for allowing us to present to you. And again, if you have, I don't want to take time tonight out from the rest of the presentations for questions, but if you have any questions, please do give us a call. I'm going to turn the floor back over to you, my big little brother.
Excellent. That was an excellent presentation. Defense, protection, security of our people is primary. It is the first line of our pledge of allegiance to the flag, to the red, black, and green. And defense, protection, and security means just that. Like, we got to make sure that we're covered on multiple fronts. When we play chess on the chessboard, different pieces have different roles, and we want to make sure that our attacks are planned and our defenses are even better planned. So thank you very much, Dr. Kelly and Sister Paulette. You guys did a great job. Okay, and I just put the phone number and the website in the chat there. So coming up next, we have our next superstar celebrity speaker coming out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. He doesn't want me to say all of this stuff, but I'm gonna say it anyways because that's my brother, and he's an awesome dude. He's a tutor, he's an author, he's an entrepreneur, he is a media superstar. My dear brother, Dwayne Genus.
Thank you, Brother Lyon. Although I would hesitate to take all of those accolades as, I'm just a regular dude. So thank you very much. And I appreciate all of those kind words. Can you see me on video?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So were you able to kind of put up the Elevate screen there? So it is indeed a privilege to be here today on a very, very special day to discuss, history essentially, and to understand, the importance of history, the importance of African history. And obviously, just want to mention a quote from our esteemed leader, the Honorable Marcus Museo Garvey. And he said, a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And so just wanted to mention that all we are doing here essentially is we are elevating the conversation in everything that we are doing. We're talking about those things that are, that are important, those things that edify us, those things that raise us to a higher level of consciousness. And so, it is all elevation, really. When you think about the Honorable Marcus Museo Garvey, that is completely in line with his with the directives of Garveyism, and the program is to elevate the Black person and elevate our being. And so, I am very privileged to, be working with Brother Lion on this project. And the whole idea behind it, as it shows right there, is to elevate our minds, elevate our thoughts, our voices, and our conversation. And so essentially this group, Elevate, is a group dedicated to intelligent, thought-provoking conversations about African culture, history, and topics that affect African people on the continent and abroad. So, essentially, one of the central pieces to this conversation is the understanding of history. And I think, when it comes to thinking about the problems that we have as a people, we don't understand why these things are happening to us. Why are the cops doing these things to us? Why are we always targeted? Why we have all these questions? Well, if you understand history and you understand yourself in the context of history, then you understand that, you'll understand why things are happening if you understood what happened before, right? If you understand the whole, the struggles and the wars that took place, and where we conquered and where we failed, it's very easy to put the pieces together on why things are happening as they are now, and what we need to do, right, to make sure that we are prepared to meet the foe, as it mentioned in our anthem. And so this conversation here, our mission essentially is to deliver thought-provoking content to drive elevated conversations of important issues affecting peoples of African descent, to create safe spaces for people of African descent to autonomously and independently lead the discussions of important issues, to employ an Afrocentric view to engage our audiences and promote healing and growth amongst people of African descent, and to win minds through education, wisdom from our past, and promoting Black consciousness and self-love. So, physically, this is represented as a platform, and we'll be advertising that soon as a Facebook group, where we'll be essentially doing the work. We'll be educating the masses and those people who join the group about history. That history that you will not find in regular conversation, that history that you won't find, in the public discourse, but that history that is hidden. We are going to bring it out, because essentially, without that history, we are lost. And as as I mentioned in the quote before, a people without knowledge of their history, their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. So a tree without roots can't grow, right? It's essentially a dead tree. And that's not what we want to be. A dead tree is easily toppled. No roots, falls over. So I think it's a perfect illustration of what we need to do. We need to be a tree with deep roots, which means we have to dig deep. We have to know that history. We have to know our own history. And so that's essentially what Elevate is about. Everyone on this call, we invite you to join this group. Tell your friends, your associates. Obviously, this is catered toward African people, and so we are looking for our own space to make sure that we are elevating one another. And so I also want to kind of make a segue into a conversation about the book that I wrote. As a brother, Minister Blyde mentioned that I am an author. And really, I'm an author. I'm privileged to be an author. Let me see how I can share my screen here. Can you give me control?
2 seconds, brother.
No problem.
Should work.
Okay, let me just see here. I'm not seeing the option. I'm on view, but I don't see any other option to. But brother Brian, while you're setting up that, let me just continue discussing. I had the privilege of writing a novel to record history, essentially. That opportunity came through the opportunity of my wife, who is Nigerian, and I had the opportunity of recording my mother-in-law's true story of her life and how she escaped the Biafran War in Nigeria in the late 1960s and came to Canada. So, it was a true honor and privilege to have had that opportunity. I want to tell you a little bit about the Biafran War, the Biafran War, the Nigerian Civil War.
Brother Genius, before you go in, I want you to try that one more time. Can you just
share screen? Got it. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, got it now. Okay. All right. So are you seeing that screen there?
We are. Okay,
great. So as I mentioned, I had an opportunity to write this novel with my wife, and so I was telling you a little bit about the Biafran War. It was a war between a short war between July 1967 to 1970 was the period of that war. It's called the Forgotten War in history when you look it up, because so many things were happening around that time. But it was the first time that you saw pictures coming out of Africa with starving babies. That was the first time that any pictures came out like that. It was from the Biafran War. And so, as I opened the book, I actually open it with this saying to help people put it in context in history, because they don't even know where to fit it. So I said, between 1967 and 1970, Neil Armstrong became the first man to walk on the moon. Civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. and presidential hopeful Robert F. Kennedy were assassinated. The Beatles released their final album, Let It Be. The Vietnam War raged on, claiming thousands of lives. And for a brief time, there was a country called Biafra. So that's how I open it, to help people understand, what time period we're talking about. But to tell you a little bit about, how I got to write this novel, and the importance of recording your history. So I'll tell you my experience. I would always go to my mother-in-law's house, the condo, and I would always see this picture here on the fireplace. And, I would always kind of look at it. My background is Jamaican. We have our pictures, but we don't have this kind of, the culture where you're, the dressing and the attire. It's not obviously African attire. And so, I was always drawn to it. And one day I said to her, Miss Iraga, this picture is so beautiful. And she says, thank you. It's the first picture my husband and I took just before the war. I said, you were in a war? She says, oh yeah. I said, can you tell me about it? And she tells me this story. It sounds like a movie. And I was like, have you ever written this down? She says, no. I said, can I write it for you? So the next day I come to the house with a video camera, and my wife is sitting across from her on the table. And she starts telling me the story about her life, how her father, when she was young, how it was in Nigeria when she was growing up as a girl. It's girls didn't really get to go to school, but her father thought she was smart. So he sent her to school, and, how she was, so smart, she became a teacher. She met her husband, who was also, a teacher. And, obviously they got married, but then he got a scholarship to study in the States. So it was a scholarship, I forget to where it was, Springfield, Massachusetts. So he had left and promised that, he was going to send for her, just as soon as his studies were completed and he was settled. And then the war broke out. So he actually was, there, and while she was in Nigeria, she had seen things that, it was difficult to kind of even talk to her about these things. It took a couple of years to write the book, because even from an emotional standpoint, it was very hard for her to remember these things and to kind of emotionally unpack all of it. But, she told us, what she could. And very, very grateful for it. And what had happened was, my father-in-law used to write these letters to her, and he used to write, I think he was writing like hundreds of letters to her, hoping that one of them would get to her. And by fluke, this pastor in Lisbon was these letters were showing up on his desk, and he was involved in the effort there. And so he sent some of these letters down to the area where she was. And Mr. Araga had her husband had arranged through, he had driven from to, I think it was somewhere in New York, where they actually had an office where they could pay money to actually have people flown out of the war zone. So they found her, and she flew out through the cover of darkness on a cargo plane, and they were shooting planes down at night, and she miraculously got through. And through different course of events, he actually ended up in Canada. He was doing his PhD there, and they were reunited in Canada with their first child. So little story about this picture here. This picture was, he had used the first money that he had gotten from his studies from his teaching job, to buy these clothes for their wedding picture. And so this was the first picture they took. So it's, a very, very special picture, special story. And I'm just so grateful that I had the privilege of recording it and publishing it. So I hope it's kind of an incentive to you as well. These stories are not just a story that, is in, our family, but it's in every family. And, I'm no writer. I didn't go to school for writing. So really, it's not a story from like Lawrence Hill, Book of Negroes or anything like that. But I said, what I write, I can, I speak English. I'm going to spend the time. I'm going to go to the library. So, over 3 years, I just, after work, I would go and I would write, and I would just try. And when I put the kids to bed, I would write a few sentences and just keep trying to knock it out. And, I eventually was able to kind of pull it together and produce the book. So it's something that I would impress upon you as well. Make sure you talk to your family members, talk to those older parents, because those stories, if you don't write them down, no one's going to. They'll be gone. And that's our history. If we don't add value to ourselves, no one's going to. And one of the kind of drivers for me was, I said, wouldn't it be cool that, when my son goes to the library, this was before the pandemic, when the libraries were open, and he would go to the library and he would say, you want to see my grandparents? He could pull the book off the shelf and say, look, these are my grandparents. I just thought that would be so cool, that their story is in the library. that they could pull it off and take a look. So that's my story. That's the conversation there. I know Minister Blyden at a separate point wanted to give a deeper dive into what the Biafran War was, what precipitated it, what were the actual drivers behind it, and details about it. And I can definitely do a presentation on that. Be very privileged to do that. But that's my discussion today.
Yes, sir. That is awesome. See, he say I'm no writer, but that equals a distinguished author, nice, humble author. You know what I mean? That's beautiful that the babies is able to go to the shelf though and pull off the family and pull a book off the shelf and it be a picture of family. That's just amazing. And remember what I was telling you about the program that I was trying to implement down here. So definitely we're gonna have to build on that so we can add these two things together and weaponize the movement. So brother Dwayne, I thank you. Shout out the African story and the Igbo family, as I am Igbo. Yeah.
Yes.
So moving forward, I wanted to touch on something else real quick. People may not realize, we talk about cultural expression, cultural celebrations even, but what is the purpose of it? Especially the purpose of honoring this day, Adwa Day specifically. Okay, you hear the story about the Biafra War, opposing colonialization. You hear here in America, we got every type of oppression to our people in record, right? So people always ask questions like, well, why is this? Well, what's the solution to this? And what do we have to do? Now, many of us here on this line right now are Garveyites and really know the solution. The solution is unification. However, the majority of our people worldwide are not thinking along these lines. So what I'm gonna do right now is ask Dr. Kelly to play this video for you. And we're gonna have a brief discussion afterwards about what is happening in this video. So please bear with me, it's about 4 or 5 minutes long. So sit back, please put your mics on mute and just really pay attention to the things that you hear.
We will not.
Can you make it as big as you can and loud as you can?
Okay, we do everything to keep sub-Saharan Africa where it is, also impoverished.
That little arrow right there, that little diagonal arrow will make it go expand. Yep.
We will not allow sub-Saharan Africa to escape that. Okay, we do everything to keep sub-Saharan Africa where it is, also impoverished. It's absolutely vital for the prosperity of everyone else. So let's get clear about that. Okay, and this means all the economic structures, all the global institutions, and the economics we teach everyone is all designed to keep Africa exactly where it is. And whether it is Europe or US or now China, it's always the same. We need Africa to be impoverished because we need those raw materials and we need them dirt cheap. Okay, so that's the message. It doesn't mean to say that there's nothing Africans can do. Of course there is. Okay, but this is the opposition that they're fighting. This is what it's about. Because if Africa does do something different, I assure you living standards of all those in Europe and North America and Asia is going to fall. Okay? And that is a big price to pay. I assure you that the West is not going to allow that without a big fight. Okay, so this is what it's fundamentally about. What I want to show you is how these structures are operating. it's just 20 minutes, so we can't do very much, but just to give you a little bit of an idea. And why I keep the ideology part there is because we are part of the producers of ideology. At universities and academic institutions, we are complicit in this whole enterprise. Okay, so the job of many Western academics is to convince Africans they have to keep doing what they're doing. Okay, and to show them it's your fault that you're poor. It's not our fault. It's your fault that you're poor. You know, so this is what we do in academic institutions, and I want to show that as well. We just start. This is what it's basically about, so you know what it's about. But I want to just show you the extent to which Africa is specializing in the production of raw materials and basic agricultural goods. We know the basic forces that have caused this underdevelopment. We know it's colonization. I will not discuss that very much because my colleague speaker is going to go into some aspects of this. But I do want to discuss the global economic structures, the global financial institutions, and economic ideology, briefly, to give you a flavor of those. Let me start with this. You can't really see it so easily, but if those of you who are interested, you want the PowerPoint, I'm sure we can make it available to you. But the thing that you really need to see is the top line. Okay? And the extent of dependency is captured by this statistic at the top. Okay? And you compare it with all other income groups, and what you see is essentially in that one statistic how dependent sub-Saharan Africa is on raw material production. Okay? This is the very heart of what makes sub-Saharan Africa beat. Okay? Here, just to have a look at one very important additional statistic, with all this export coming from sub-Saharan Africa, how much does sub-Saharan Africa account for in terms of global trade value? We know there are vast resources coming from there, but look at the bottom line in terms of global trade value. Look at that. 0.5%, 1975, 0.95%, going down to 0.1. To 0.1. Meaning that with all these vast resources being produced, how much are they getting for it? Nothing. Nothing. This is a very significant piece of data. Then I just want to show you what has happened to sub-Saharan Africa, because what we know, and from all studies, no country ever develops without manufacturing. Okay, producing raw materials will not take you anywhere. Producing basic agricultural goods will not take you anywhere. And let's have a look at how much manufacturing activity takes place in sub-Saharan Africa. We can look over the last 15 odd years, 15, 20 years. And we see manufacturing has actually declined as a percentage of the total. This is percentages of total production in sub-Saharan Africa. How much of it is accounted for by manufacturing? So this figure here is 17% of the total. Most of the rest, when we talk of industry, it includes manufacturing, but the bulk of it is mining. Okay? Raw material extraction. This is the bulk of it. And here we see actually raw material extraction has stayed the same. What has caused industry to fall is the fall in manufacturing production. This is deliberate because we will never, as Western economists, as Western policymakers, we cannot afford to allow Africa to industrialize and start producing manufactures. Okay, so we will do everything to stop that. And I'm going to show you how we actually block that. It's
Okay. Now, did you all see or hear? Everybody hear that at least? LB, I know you said you had some trouble hearing, but you got the basic gist of it, right? Because now this was a meme that was going, not a meme, but it was videos going around on social media. You know, people in an uproar because this white man is telling you how, oh, the reality of it is this gentleman is a professor and he teaches a class on world economy and how the world operates. And he's teaching a certain level of classes. As a matter of fact, you notice he mentioned his presentation was 20 minutes, but you only saw the 5-minute clip. You can find the other pieces to his clip, but you can't find the other presenter that he was just talking about that was presenting about colonialism. Okay? That's a different issue. However, so we see that the goal of the world, real quick, let me just share my screen one more time. I want to show you one other picture that we can focus on before we get out of here. This picture here, you see them. The goal from 1881 at least has been the domination of that continent. To this very day, they're trying to dominate the continent. That's why it's important when we have our victories, when we have our Haiti with Toussaint and Dessalines, when we have our Ghana with Kwame Nkrumah, and of course when we have our Ethiopia, land of our fathers, with Menelik II, we have to honor those. The time has come for us to cast aside hero worship of other races and emulate heroes of our own. Ashe. So with that, I'm gonna leave y'all with some feel-good music. If you got any questions, please type them in the chat. We're gonna stick around for a few more minutes. But if you got any questions, please type them in the chat. It looks like I got a hand up. You can just go ahead and unmute yourself, brother. If you want to ask a question, go for it.
Yeah, this is Hakeem Cosby.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Hakeem Cosby. I'm a professor emeritus at SUNY Erie, also one of the co-founders of African Consciousness Workshop. And I don't really have a question. I just have a few comments, if you would bear with me.
Yes, sir.
First of all, the Battle of Adwa was one of the most important events in African political history. And it's hard for us to imagine what colonialism was like in the late 1800s. So after this battle, Africans across the board were inspired by that battle. And in their consciousness, they understood it was possible to defeat a European army. The most important things about European armies is they had very advanced weaponry. In my opinion, to really understand Adwa, you have to understand how the Ethiopians were able to amass certain rifles at that time, which is very unique, because one of the things in technopolitics is that Europeans would never transfer the technology of weaponry to Africa. And that's a whole nother conversation. Second thing I'd like to say is that Mussolini was a child at that time of the battle, and his thinking about how to reassert Ethiopian hegemony had to do with his anger towards that particular battle. Haile Gerima made a major documentary, and I don't know how many people saw this, a major documentary by the title of Battle of Adwa. We actually screened that at the African Consciousness Workshop. What I would suggest that you do next year is to screen the documentary of the Battle of Adwa and invite Haile Gerima, who owns the Sankofa bookstore in DC, as a commentator, because you know he did the movie called Sankofa. So we actually brought him to Buffalo when he presented that movie. But he's made several movies that are all very, very powerful. But the documentary called The Battle of Adwa is worth showing in such an event. Only thing else I'd like to say is one of the most important warriors that sometimes we miss is Samora Touré, whom the Europeans called the Napoleon of African warfare. And we should also talk about the strategy of African warfare. And we don't really extrapolate enough from strategy of freeing ourselves. And in relationship to the Biafran War, we have Nigerians now in Buffalo who hold memories of that war, and many of their ancestors were totally destroyed in that war. But one little subtext to that, during that war, the Igbos made their weapons. And see, this was really something the Europeans never wanted folks to know, that Africans could make rifles, which was done in the Biafran conflict. But that's just a few of my comments. I love the presentation. I appreciate you millennials understanding the struggle and trying to share information. I hope you do that with Lumumba at some point, as well as Nkrumah and so many others. But thank you so much for the presentation.
Oh my God. Yo, first of all, thank you for your time and your participation. But all of that, sir, everything that you just said, thank you so much for that, because you just brought that up to a whole different level. I was just about to sit here like, getting ready to start taking notes and waiting for your presentation. So let us make sure that we connect, sir. I'm gonna put my phone number right there in the chat. 934. Please send me a text or get at me as soon as you get a chance. And let's arrange that. That actually should happen. As a matter of fact, due to our position as far as Black History 365, we don't necessarily need to wait till next year. We can make it happen at any point. But next year, as far as the big event for the day, we definitely can do that. So again, I sent my phone number. Please reach out to me when you get a chance. Anybody, if you have things that you got going on coming up, please type it in the chat so everybody gets a chance to follow along. As a matter of fact, put your emails in the chat so we can all reach out to each other and keep this network strong. Most of us have some sort of connection to each other, but we want to make sure that we can expand our network. So just real quick to go back one time before let me just say this. I wanted to send one more shout out to our sponsors for today. Our host, Dr. Kelly, Sister Paulette, protection for your family, your business, and your personal identity. StresslessEveryday.com. Also sponsored by Adormance by L. Enhance your Empress energy. Adormance by L on Instagram. Make sure you put the underscores in there. She yelled at me earlier for not putting underscores. And also elevate our minds, our thoughts, our voices, and our conversation. Once again, I'd like to thank all of you for sponsoring this event today. It was an honor to have you all on. We also had Real Truth and Power on here from Baltimore. He had to step out, but he wanted to say special shout out to everybody as well. So with that, like I said, please go ahead and drop all. You got anything coming up? If you got a link you want somebody to go to, anything, put it in the chat right now, and we're gonna vibe out with this celebration to this song right here. Peace and love, family.
Seems like they have been wasted, eh? Bueno. just goes on to show. Till I'm laid to rest, yes, always be depressed. There's no life in the West. I know the East is the best. All the propaganda that spread, tongues will have to confess. Oh, I'm in bondage, living is a mess, and I've got to rise up, alleviate the stress. No longer will I expose my weakness. Ego seek knowledge begins with humbleness. Work 7 to 7, yet me still penniless. For the food up on me table, master, God bless. All of the needy and shelterless. Ethiopia await all prince and princess. Till I'm laid to rest. Yes, always be depressed. There's no life in the West. I know the East is the best. Yes, propaganda that spread. Tongues will have to confess. What could have been about the East? Everybody want a piece. Africa free Africans, Marcus Mosiah speak. Unification, no nobody feet. What a day when we walking down Redemption Street. Ban up our head, Bible in a hand, one and all. Make we try the promised land. But you go down a Congo, stop in a Shashamane land. The city of Ferraris where Selassie come from. In Addis Ababa, then Botswana. Left Kenya, I end up in a Ghana. Oh, what a beauty, my eyesight behold. Holy Ethiopia, protect me from the cold. Till I'm laid to rest. Yes, always be depressed. There's no life in the West. I know the East is the best. All the propaganda that spread, tongues will have to confess. Organize and centralize, come as one. Oversee shall be so many more than sun. Some new one replenish, pure and clean and for too long we've been under this man. Some a say for bag of riches and them empty hand. Once them is stupid and laugh on you can. Easier for a camel to enter through an eagle line than it is for a rich guy to enter in a Zion. Take it from Iman. So till I'm laid to rest. Yes, always be depressed. There's no living in the West. I know the East is the best. Lord, propaganda them spread. Tongues will have to confess. Oh, I'm in bondage. Living is a mess. And I've got to rise up, alleviate the stress. No longer will I expose my weakness. He who seek knowledge begins with humbleness. Work 7 to 7, yet me still penniless. For the food up on me table, master, God bless. All of the needy and shelterless. Ethiopia await all prince and princess. Till I'm laid to rest. Yes, always be depressed. There's no life in the West. I know the East is the best. All the propaganda them spread. Tongues will have to confess. What could have been some of the East? Everybody want a piece. Africa free Africans, Marcus Mosiah speak. Unification, no number defeat. What a day, we're walking down Redemption Street. Ban up our head, Bible in a hand, one and all. Make me try the promised land. But you go down a Congo and then Shashamane land. The city of Ferraris where Selassie come from. From Addis Ababa in a Botswana. Left Kenya, I end up in a Ghana. Oh, what a beauty, me eyesight behold. Holy Ethiopia, protect me from the cold. Till I'm laid to rest. Yes, always be depressed. There's no life in the West. I know the East is the best. All the propaganda them spread. Tongues will have to confess. Organize, centralize, come as one.
Organized, centralized, come as one. The Pan-African message sung by Buju Banton. You can't get no better than that. So before we end it, I mean, did anybody have anything you wanted to add? This has been an awesome observance, and I just appreciate all you guys' time and participation. Come on, somebody want to say anything before we close out? Sister Queen LV, you've been over there working on them beads and adornments. I see you.
I thoroughly enjoyed today's presentation. There were some things that I was not all aware of, and there were some things that were like refreshers for me. Today, period, even before the event, has been a big history lesson because I was listening to a lot of unknown Black historical facts on YouTube while I was working on my business earlier. So it's like, this is a good way for me to end the day because I've just been listening to historical stuff all day anyway. And the anthem is special to me, not just because I sing it well, or I don't want to sound not humble, but the anthem not just special to me because I sing it at all of our events. You know what I'm saying? It's like a war cry for me. It's like when you step into yourself and you see victory even when it's not there. That's why I love singing it, you know, and that's basically what Adwa Day was about. You know what I'm saying? You up in my country, you doing stuff you ain't got no business. I made a mistake. Now let me chop that and correct that. And
Yes.
so I just feel privileged to be able to, you know, sing for sing for us, sing that song, period, to be able to sing, period. So yeah, gratitude for the presentation, and gratitude for Sister Clark, because I actually have some legal matters that I probably need to go ahead and just become a member. So I just learned a lot of good stuff today.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Sister.
I just want to say, oh my gosh, this was great. I'm so enriched, and I'm going to go to bed definitely with some things on my mind, but also just the gratitude for the lessons. So thank you.
Awesome, awesome. And to the blurry person behind you, salute. We appreciate your support. We see you, family. We see you in the blurry. We feel you. We feel your struggle. Genius Nation, you want to close out? You want to say anything before we close out, big brother?
No, you know what? I'm just so privileged and honored to be a part of all that is going on. You know what? I think we are the almost like the core of something that is happening really big. And I think the redemption is happening from right here. And so it is a privilege to be part of this point in time. You know, the pandemic has been really, it's been almost like, it is a moment of change, cataclysmic change. And I think it's a moment that we need to capitalize on. We need to take this moment and make sure that we make the best of it. And, you know, I think we're doing it. And so I'm excited to just to be a part and to, you know, be a part of what is happening right now. And Sister LB, we love you singing the song too. I love you singing the song all the time. So I'm just enjoying your voice as well.
Ashe. I was remiss to notice that our Minister of Education, Brother Charles Butler, is in the building. Salute, sir. Officer on deck. Can you hear me? You might be on mute. Well, we got to link up because he's in DC and he can connect me to the author that Dr. Crispi was talking about. I know. I'm not sure if he's Brother Butler is still with us or not. So this is great. I see we got the almighty Dean Mordecai. Do you want to jump in and say something, brother?
That's big up, brother. Big up, brothers and sisters. I jumped in late. I came on 8:19, so I miss everything. Yeah, I miss.
No, it's all right, brother. Your presence is always welcome, and this has been recorded, so we will have it on our our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to get a chance to check everything out.
Okay, what do I search for on YouTube?
You know what? I haven't titled it yet, so you will know because I'm gonna share it in the group page, so you will.
Okay, all right, respect.
But the most important thing about today is the celebration of the Battle of Adwa, the victory of Adwa, and just do something Pan-African today before your night's over. Light a candle, pour out something beautiful, have a yummy meal, and just do something. Smile at a little black child somewhere.
Okay.
Brother Curtis in the building. I see you, sir. What's good? You still with me? Uh-oh, we got some connection issues. I can dig it. All right. Well, race first to all, and to all a good night. I thank you again, and happy Adwa Day.
All right.
All right, y'all.
Race first, many blessings. Good night. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, family. Race first.